Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to be talking about a case that has so many different elements to it. The fact that I had to read, I think, 5 or 6 articles, which I do regardless, but most of the time the information is repetitive, as it should be, because ideally, so long as all the articles are giving you the same amount of detail, everything should be the same, right? In this situation, there are details that are left in some articles, there are details added into other articles, there's some details that completely change the perspective. Everything's linked down below. So it's actually a couple of you guys who reached out to me and told me about this, and truly, it does sound quite movie-esque. A Utah mom wrote a kid's book about grief after her husband's death. Now she's charged with his murder. Kouri Richins' husband was found dead at the foot of their bed last March. She just closed on a house for her business, she told investigators at the time. Around 9 p.m., she brought her husband, Kouri Richins, a celebratory Moscow Mule cocktail in the bedroom of their home in Utah. She left to sleep with their son in his room and returned around 3 a.m. to find her husband lying on the floor, cold to the touch, she told authorities. About a year to the day after her husband died, Richins published a children's book, Are You With Me?, about navigating grief and the loss of a loved one. But investigators now allege she killed her husband of 9 years with a lethal dose of illicit fentanyl. This month, they charged her with aggravated murder and 3 counts of possession of a controlled substance with intent to distribute. Newly released court documents detailed a series of illicit fentanyl purchases in the months leading up to his death. Kouri Richins, 33, allegedly bought the drugs from an acquaintance identified as CL in court documents. Weeks before her husband's death, the Richins had marked Valentine's Day with a dinner at home. Shortly after the dinner, Eric became very ill. Eric told a friend that he thought his wife was trying to poison him, court documents say. There's already a lot to be discussed here. It's crazy to me, it's absolutely crazy to me to think about marriages that fall apart to such an extent. Well, it's not really a marriage falling apart, it's someone being potentially a psychopath. I'm not going to throw that word around, but someone being a murderer. I cannot imagine living in the same house as someone that you would then think, oh, this person poisoned me. Like if I were sick after dinner, I'd be like, oh, they poisoned me. That is terrifying. I cannot even imagine, and I can't even imagine mentally what that must do to a person, because I'm pretty sure most people would react in the type of way of like, you know, even if our marriage is struggling or even whatever, they'd never do that, right? And I feel like there's a whole self-gaslight that would happen. That's just me projecting. I'm just thinking about how difficult that must have been. Regardless, one thing I do want to point out right off the bat, because they didn't in this article. So remember how she closed on a house and then she went to bring him a Moscow Mule to celebrate closing on said house? Well, that house was a point of contention because he wasn't that happy about it from what the articles say. Let me explain. So there's this other article titled, Inside the $3.75 million home grief author Kouri Richins allegedly killed her husband over. So that celebratory Moscow Mule was to celebrate this house. Now let's talk about what was going on with this house, because if we think about it based on what's written here, even the celebration doesn't make much sense considering the context. Kouri, 33, allegedly argued with Eric, 39, about her plans to purchase and flip this 20,000 square foot home just days before he was found dead at their residence. It would have cost them $2 million in down payment and renovations to eventually flip it. Kouri had dreamed of flipping the estate, but Eric refused to pay the hefty price. On March 5th, 2022, court documents reveal that hours after Kouri allegedly slipped her husband a lethal dose of fentanyl, she signed the papers to close on the home. She then invited friends to the 10-acre property to drink and celebrate the new purchase. Kouri claims they were celebrating buying the home last March when her husband died of a massive overdose as their 3 kids slept upstairs. However, Eric's family told investigators that he had planned to tell his wife they were not buying the mansion on the same day. She was also told she was being cut out of the will, the warrants say. So then they go on to give more information about the home, it being potentially bought on sale, whatever. Nobody, I think, is really concerned about that here. The Moscow Mule, bringing that to him to celebrate closing on the house is diabolical sounding from what we have here, because it really is like, hey, not only am I doing this thing that you allegedly don't agree with, but here's a drink that if it isn't going to kill you, it's going to cause you massive harm. There were other articles that were saying that the reason that she slept in her children's room was because one of them was having night terrors, which, let's say, benefit of the doubt, I guess, but it seems all a little too coincidental to me that she would bring him the drink for something to celebrate something he didn't want in the first place, and then after the drink she goes to sleep in one of her children's rooms, and then she casually wakes up and goes to check on him and finds him dead. That doesn't really add up to me. Let's talk about the drugs here. So he had a lethal dose of fentanyl in his system, right, which we discussed before. The autopsy and toxicology report revealed that he died of a fentanyl overdose. As we know, he had about 5 times the lethal dosage in his system according to a medical examiner. Basically, the connection that Richins had with this CL, aka the drug dealer. What happened, and I'm summarizing a couple of paragraphs that you can go read if you want to. Kouri Richins would contact CL, and because there were multiple properties that she was either flipping or dealing with in some professional respect, they would drop off there. So she'd leave the money, CL would show up, take the money, leave the drugs. Very straightforward. That's how she got the fentanyl in the first place. It's kind of crazy because sometimes they'd leave the fentanyl pills at outdoor fire pits on the same property where they'd prior delivered like hydrocodone. Like, it was just there. It's crazy how organized this was, but also how ridiculous it sounds to like, I'll leave the drugs in the fire pit, but that might just be me. Another part of all of this is the money. So obviously we already kind of discussed money when we were talking about that house that she wanted, he didn't, so on and so forth. But what we didn't discuss, and what a lot of articles aren't bringing up, is that she was allegedly in debt of like $2 million and something dollars. Let's get into that. So it says that on March 1st, Richins' outstanding state and federal tax liability was $189,840. She owed a hard money lender at least $1,847,760. She also owed her husband at least $514,346, the document stated. On March 3rd, she had a lengthy telephone call with the IRS and talked to her hard money lender, the charging documents noted. Hours later, she prepared her husband a Moscow Mule cocktail. Miss Richins told investigators that her husband drank the cocktail while in bed. We know how that went. While she told the police she'd left her phone in the couple's room while caring for her child, the status on her phone shows that it was locked and unlocked multiple times, and there was also movement recorded on the phone, the documents state. In addition, tolls and phone billing data for defendant's phone show that messages were sent and received during that time. Mr. Richins was pronounced dead on March 4th, 2022. Almost immediately, Miss Richins, a real estate agent, closed on a multi-million-dollar mansion the couple had been arguing about. 2 days after his death, she arranged for a locksmith to drill into her husband's safe. When his sister and trustee objected, Miss Richins became enraged and punched her in the face and neck, the documents state. There are so many things going on here at the same time, and I don't think they're conflicting at all. There's such a big amount of pressure in so many different places that it seems like this was bound to explode. So remember how Kouri Richins punched her sister-in-law because she was saying that she wasn't supposed to be drilling into the safe? Kouri sued the sister for the rights to the property she and Eric held jointly under their prenuptial agreement. But she wasn't completely left hanging financially. As prosecutors described, she opened at least 4 separate life insurance policies totaling $1.9 million between 2015 and 2017. The new information also includes the value of Eric's life insurance policy held jointly with his business partner, $2 million. Kouri allegedly made herself the sole beneficiary of that policy 3 months before Eric's death. The insurance company alerted Eric and he changed it back, but it is unclear whether Kouri knew he had reinstated his business partner as the beneficiary. The prosecutor's narrative indicates a financial motive. All of this put together, again, I have to repeat myself, sorry, annoying, but I can't imagine what kind of stress the husband had to be under, Eric Richins had to be under, to see all of these things. So first you think she's poisoning you. Then there's the fact that she changed your life insurance policy. I don't know how anyone would process or deal with that information, because as an outsider who obviously has nothing to do with any of this, I don't even know what to do with that information, because truly it seems so blatant in a way, because it's like, how do you really think you're going to change someone's life insurance policy without it getting back to them at all or anyone they know? I just don't know how that would work, though, to be fair, the systems are broken, so. But on top of that, the poisoning, getting the drugs on her property, I don't know. So much of this feels like it should have been caught earlier, and I say that because I wonder if these are the first strange behaviors, let us say, that she's displayed, because it's really hard for me to believe that someone, and I could be wrong, would go from, let's say, being unhappy in their marriage, let's just say that, and then just be like, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna get these drugs, I'm gonna hide them on these properties, I'm gonna change the insurance policy, you know, it's very calculated, so part of me is like, okay, maybe they thought about this for a long time, or the other part of me, they're not necessarily conflicting. Maybe this is a repeated behavior, not necessarily that she's killed anyone else. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying perhaps in the past there were other red flags that would indicate that with a slow buildup, maybe it would evolve to this point, whatever we want to call this point, being a murder, I suppose. The main point that I entered the story with, I suppose, was the story of her writing a book for children, it seems, about grief and how to process that grief. I don't even really know what I want to say about that without just going completely off, but that has me all the way fucked up. I'm just gonna say that. I cannot imagine when these children are older, just imagine being one of these children when they're older, whether I personally think she's guilty, let me be clear. Whatever happens, however much time she spends in jail, if any, your kids are gonna see that you published a book about grief and how to deal with grief catered to children when you were, and probably always will be, the prime suspect in his demise. And maybe you read that book to your kids. I would assume she did read it to her kids. I feel like that by itself, putting aside all the trauma that comes with grief, which in and of itself is indescribable, but just the extra added thing of, hey, I'm gonna read you a book about that I wrote about grief, but I also am the murderer, so I'm the one who caused the grief. I truly am gobsmacked at all of this. There's nothing additional I can say. You guys can let me know what you think in the comments down below. Let me know if you think she's guilty. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you to my patrons as always, and I'll catch you guys next time.